Hi YouTubers, I wanted to bring you guys another game, and this is going to be part 2 of the perk defense lecture. And I actually have uh, a game between two no-names that I found on a database because I couldn't find any Grandmaster games in the specific line I wanted to play. But I'm going to show you guys some sidelines, and we'll get right into it. Now in this game, D6 was played first, whereas in the last game, Black played G6 and Bishop G7 first, but Knight F6, Knight C3, G6, F4, Bishop G7 just transposes to our main Austrian attack position here. And C5 was played in this game. The last game we looked at castling here and Bishop D3, and we saw a game where Benko began with Bishop G4, H3, and we saw this bishop being traded off, and Black played Knight C6. So those are some important lines to know, and and there's different move orders there also. Like if castling Bishop D3, Knight C6. I did mention in the other video E5, but if you want, you could just castle and Bishop G4 would transpose to the position that we got in the last game. So there's some move order subtleties there. C5 is probably the best move that Black has at his disposal here, and should be met by Bishop B5 check. Now if you want, you could take the pawn, but if you want to do that, I recommend looking into that in a different video. But the sharpest move here is Bishop B5 check, and then after Bishop D7 to go E5. Knight G4, this is what you're going to see from your opponents here, where E6 is going to be the way you want to play this. Instead of E6, you could take the bishop, and this is a different way to play. This is called the Shirov attack, and you can look into that on your own, but I do recommend E6. And after bishop takes B5, you do this in between. E takes F7 check, and notice that Black does not really want to take here and allow himself to be harassed. So King D7 here, Knight takes B5, and Queen A5 check is met by Knight C3, C takes D4, Knight takes D4. This is been played so many times, and there's two main moves in this position here. The first being Bishop takes D4, which we're looking at in this game. The next game we're going to look at H5, and you can see that both moves are pretty logical because the knight's being hit, and so you either have to take the knight or defend the knight. Defend your knights. So Bishop takes D4. Here's what we're going to look at. And Queen takes D4. Now Knight C6 hits the Queen. The best square here for this Queen is C4. So we're keeping an eye on the pawn and holding things together. Queen B6 is the main move here, and that was the move that was played in the game. Queen E2, so hitting the knight again, and now H5, Bishop D2, Knight D4, Queen D3, Knight F5, for example. Well, actually, this is all played in the game. Knight E4. So Knight E4 was met by Knight G to E3 in the game, and after this move we see a lot of simplifications, and therefore I want to look at some different options here that'll show you just some different patterns and how you need to be playing this line. Rook A to C8, H to F8, I'm sorry, is a pretty natural move. It blocks the pawn and threatens to win the pawn back. You just want to castle on the queen side here, and if they centralize the other rook, H to E1, Rook takes on F7, we go H3, knight f2, knight takes on f2, and queen takes f2 here, queen d5, hitting that rook, but also creating this threat. Rook f6, so stopping it, and then g4 hits that knight, knight d4, queen takes on b7 now. And you can see white's going to be a little bit better in this line also. Let's look at another sideline, rook a c8. We just, again, castle on the queen side, knight g to e3, for example. Bishop just takes on e3, knight takes e3, and now we go c3. If they take the rook, we retake, queen a6, queen h3 check, king c7, and now queen e6. King b8, queen takes on e7, queen takes a2, and after knight takes d6, you can start to see it going really downhill here. Queen a1 check, king c2, queen a4 check, king d2, and queen takes f4 check, king e1. You can see that white is going to have an easier time in these positions. Even though white's king is sort of in the center here, this pawn, the queen, and the knight here definitely gives white a better position in this. So, so that's a pretty important line. And let's see what happened in the game then. So knight g to e3 was played here. Oh, this is the line we actually just looked at. So in the game, I'm sorry, I went too far. Where am I? I got lost. Bear with me. Okay, so we saw this knight move right here. And what happened was bishop takes e3, queen takes e3 check, queen takes e3, knight takes e3. So a mass simplification, king goes to d2, knight takes g2, and then rook f1 was played. Rook h7. Well, there was another game, a grandmaster game actually, that I almost wanted to do that game, but I actually couldn't find it anywhere online. But it was a game where the rook actually went to f8, which might be even better. But after knight g5, knight h4, rook a to e8, e1, knight f5 that was played, rook e4, and white ended up winning that game. And actually, the engine will tell you that white does have advantage in that position also. So a rook at h7 makes some sense, I suppose. It hits that pawn. Knight g5, so defending the pawn. And rook g7, rook f2, hits that knight. Knight h4, rook e1. This was all played. Rook to f8 here. Rook e3. Rook g to takes f7. Knight takes f7. Rook takes f7. King e2. Knight f5. Rook e4. Rook f8. Rook g2. So white trying to poke around here, trying to hit that pawn. Now after knight h4, we see black defending. Rook g5. Rook c8. c3. Simple. Easy. e6. f5. And you sort of get the sense that it's just inevitability and that there's really no way to legitimately stop white from winning the game eventually. Knight takes f5, rook takes g6, rook e8, rook f6, rook e7. A lot of maneuvering. King f3, knight g7, rook e2, e5. Rook g2, knight e6, rook g7, and now d5 here. Rook f5 hits the e pawn, and now after the knight goes to f4, black just defends with this rook. Knight g to f6, knight d3, and now rook f7. So, and here's another piece of advice. If whenever you're up ahead material, like in this game, white's ahead material, so the rook trade is clearly going to benefit him, unless there's some tactical reason not to trade pieces. Generally, when you're ahead of material, you want to make as many trades as possible to simplify and get pieces off the board, so that your advantage becomes more pronounced as pieces come off the board. And knight takes b2, rook takes e7 check. That's what happened. White traded rooks, king takes e7, and now rook takes e5 check, king d6, and takes on h5. Starting to get a little hopeless here. I'll show the rest of the game quickly. And you can see that the h pawn is going to be telling, and that with this rook, it's just going to be impossible for black to stay in the game. So, and I want to recap briefly on this game, so we can kind of see the general strategy in this line. And remember, you're not always gonna. You're gonna have some games where the king's gonna take here, and those are gonna be really quick. But this is, if black knows there's stuff in this line, he's gonna play like this. And after queen c4, he's going to go queen b6. Because against almost any other move here, h3, the knight's going to go back to f6, the bishop's going to go to d2, the queen's going to have to move, etc. So queen e2, h5, and we saw that white was able to just slowly build up an attack, and all the simplifications that happened after knight g to e3 here favored white, and white really had an advantage, however small that might have been, throughout the entire game. So I thought it was a game worth showing, just to show, if anything, some sidelines. But we're going to look at some of the main lines in the next two games. Thank you, guys.